Welcome to the third World Café webinar. The subject is engaging employees to design successful welfare plans as part of an overall corporate social responsibility strategy. So we're going to hear, first of all, from someone who I've known for many years as an expert in human resource management, advising organizations on how to work best with employees, how to recruit, but also not just recruit, how to maintain engaged, content workforce and retain employees, which is a huge challenge now for many organizations across the EU in the era following the pandemic.
Hi, my name is Lorraine Rooney and I have been involved in advising organisations on recruitment and human resource management for 25 years. I ran a recruitment company for 15 of those, and for the last 5 years I have been self-employed as an advisor working with private, public and non-profit sector clients. I believe that it is vital for employers to have an attractive employee welfare package in place if they want to attract talented people, want those people to be productive and good at what they do, and if they want to retain those people and avoid frequent turnover of staff. I believe for a welfare plan or package to be attractive, for it to appeal to potential recruits and for it to satisfy the needs of an organisation's existing staff, it should be co-designed by employers and employees together. Employers have limits on what they can do for their staff. These limits are determined by the resources that they have available to support welfare plans, although it can sometimes be the case that very successful, highly profitable, well-resourced organisations do not prioritise their employees' welfare, which I think is a mistake. Such employers can suffer reputational damage and have to bear the considerable costs associated with high turnover of staff. Clearly, it is employers and their shareholders or stakeholders that have to ultimately sign off on and then fund employee welfare plans. So it is employers that have to make the commitment to step up employee welfare plans and then to structure their design, at least initially, after all they will be paying for it. But it is better that an employer brings its employees into the design process early in the process to ensure that what they are proposing will achieve its key objectives in terms of staff retention and attracting future recruits. Such a dialogue will quickly reveal whether what the employer is proposing is too little or is doing the wrong things and potentially misdirecting resources. Alternatively, it might push the employers to stretch its budget to put more resources into staff welfare because it has concluded that this is for its long-term benefit. On the other side of this co-creation processes, sometimes employees can have unrealistic expectations and find that they move through the design journey, they have to compromise on their ambitions, especially when they come to understand the financial constraints which limit what an employer can do. Transparency from the employer from the beginning of the process will make compromise from employees more likely. Influencing both sides in this co-design relationship, and something both sides needs to be aware of, is the external or wider world context. For example, when the global financial crash happened through 2009 to 2010, the profitability of most employers was seriously affected, and many employees had to not only reduce their aspirations in terms of employee welfare plans, but had to actually take significant pay cuts to retain their jobs. Nearly 15 years later, there has been a significant shift in the other direction since the global pandemic, with many employees demanding to work more flexible hours or to work for all or some of their contracted hours at home. Many people during the pandemic came to recognise the values of aspects of their lives other than earning money. In some sectors in some EU member states, employers now have a problem attracting new employees. Some now, more than ever, employers arguably have little choice, especially in those sectors where there are problems attracting good staff, but to engage with employees to design welfare plans that are attractive to employees. I will conclude by saying that employee welfare is a key aspect of corporate responsibility, and the more successful an organisation's employee welfare plan is, the more successful that organisation will be at what it does. But to be successful, it has to be credible for both employer and employee, and by that I mean that it has to be realistic. And for that to be possible, there has to be an openness in the design process between both parties, employers and employees, about what each needs to achieve and what room they have to negotiate. Openness and honesty fosters trust, and in my experience, where there is trust, even if the external circumstances are very difficult, there will be success.
Okay, everyone. Thank you. We're going into the discussion, and the first discussion point, and I'll hand over to you guys now, is how, for you, and we have people from a number of EU regions on this session today, how's the relationship between employers and employees changing in your region? Because circumstances vary across the EU. So how's the relationship between employers and employees changing in your region?
So the relationship between employers and employees here in Galicia, at least, it was characterized by, sorry, I don't remember the terminology in English, collective bargaining,
Yes.
trade unions, social dialogue, right? So there was a strong communication between the employers and the employees through the trade unions. Then in 2008, there was a big crisis in Spain. So the precarity of the labor work and the temporary contracts and so on affected the relationship between the employees and the employers. So this communication that existed, it was weakened, and it has been weakened throughout these following years. So that's one issue to have in mind with between the relationship of employers and employees in Spain and in Galicia. The government has promoted a lot of laws and rules for social welfare and for families to, yes, but that's through the formal channels of communication, not the more informal channels with the real needs of the sectors. That's my take on this.
Just a quick question. Has there been change since the pandemic? You know, are employees in a stronger position since the pandemic, do you think, in Galicia?
I think the employees now they can work from home. There are a lot of working from home. But as an example, the law from the company has to pay you the internet, the electricity, the depreciation of your furniture, and etc. That doesn't exist yet. That's not being implemented in many companies. So I think in this case. It's hard to tell, right? Okay, you work from home, but you are contributing to the company in another sense. Yeah. So.
Okay. Thanks for that, Sophia. That's a really useful insight. Is there perhaps someone from Tuscany, from Italy?
Yeah, as always, we have had a discussion with our hosts, and we have discussed this first point in a more theoretical way. And we have pointed something paradoxical, because we really can see a significant shift in how people identify with their work compared to the years before the post-industrial revolution. In the past, people often found a deep sense of identity and purpose through their jobs. People used to identify with their jobs also because working maybe as a worker or as an employee wherever, everyone would be able to buy a house or to build a house for their kids and so on. However, today, many of us identify more with our activities outside of work. And this is strange because workers has a lack of power compared to the years before the post-industrial revolution in Italy. But we identify less in our working activities. And I think we think this shift is largely due to the economic crisis that we have faced since 2008, 2013 in Italy. And the crisis has led to a scenario where work often fulfills only the basic needs for survival rather than providing a sense of personal fulfillment. So as a result of this situation, is crucial for workplaces to be pleasant and engaging environment. Without such qualities, companies struggle to attract and retain highly skilled workers. So creating a positive work atmosphere is not a luxury, but we think it's very necessary for nowadays, today's competitive job market. So the reflection is mostly related to that flexibility is something that is a sword over the head of the workers, but it's also something that workers can use to find other jobs, since the possibility to identify with our jobs is always less and less. So we see that there's a different way to perceive the working activities and a different way to be loyal to the job that we have found. And this create a condition where it's necessary for the job to be attractive.
That's interesting. So it's, in many ways, it is the same in Italy as it is in Ireland, as it is in Spain. Okay, thank you. Is there anyone from those on my side of the geography?
Speaking recently to trade union representatives, and they were saying that one of the challenges that the employers are facing, and obviously it's impacting on employees and trade unions, is they're struggling with three things. One is the post-COVID return to work and trying to return their workplace to the status quo. And next to that is changes in legislation around flexible working. And the third element is legislation around disability discrimination, where flexible working is seen as part of reasonable adjustments for employees. And those three issues seem to be becoming conflated for employers and impacting on employees and causing trade unions to have to intervene.
Okay, that's interesting. So in fact, my initial comment that the balance of power has shifted to some degree in favor of employees, unions still feel that employers, in some cases, may actually have diminished workers' rights in this era after the pandemic. Is that essentially what you're saying?
Yeah, that's it.
Thanks, Stephen. Esther, thanks for being so patient.
Okay, just well, I'm talking from Spain, and just I would like to share a figure I heard yesterday on TV. In Spain, the work absentees is over 22%. I don't know the reasons why, but I think that not having a good welfare plans in the companies had something to do with that. I don't know the figure in other countries. I don't know if you think it's high or it's normal, but for me, I thought it's very high.
I think it is high by the standards of other EU member states. And I'm not sure what the reason is. I don't live in Spain, but what reasons do you think might explain it?
I think there is a very long distance between employees' needs and what the employers want. The society is changing. Maybe the companies are not changing at the same rate, at the same speed than the society. The younger employees, we heard before in the talking from the speakers, we heard before.
That's interesting. So employers are more conservative and less prepared to change, and perhaps
Maybe
are out of step with society. That's very interesting. Thank you, Esther. John.
Well, my point, Conor, was more or less to emphasize with what Fabio said. As an employer in the professional services arena, we have to liaise with employees in terms of trying to come up with successful welfare plans, be that enhanced pensions, flexibility. COVID brought flexibility to the working environment, and that's something that we aren't going to push back on. Yes, I'd like all the staff in the work at certain times, in the office at certain times, but that's not something that we would be pushing back on and trying to maintain and retain staff. But society has changed, and in the world of a global economy and young people, trying to hire young people into professional services, they with the world of influences out there, social media influences, the ability to travel the world, they're not only looking at traveling the world, they're looking at employment opportunities across the world, educational opportunities across the world. So to try and retain talent in our arena and in our industry, we have a lot to do in terms of making it, forgive the term, sexy again, because we're competing with tech, we're competing with the world of influencers, be they fashion people in fashion, people playing football at an international level or otherwise, and young people are looking beyond their locality and what their fathers and grandfathers did before them, unfortunately for them. So concur with what you said, Conor, and emphasize with Fabio. But society has changed.
And we're still learning. That's why we're having this discussion. We're trying to collectively understand the change that's happening throughout Europe. and beyond across the globe. I'm going to move on, everyone, to a second discussion point, if that's okay. And that is this is the purpose of what we're about in sharing knowledge. Are there any good examples in your region of organizations that have prioritized putting good employee welfare programs in place, where they have, as Lorraine Rooney, our speaker at the start of this session, where they have co-designed, or as she suggested, they have co-designed those plans with employees. So it's examples of good practice that you are aware of in your region. Is there any that we can point to? Anyone?
Yeah, I can start if you want. We have pointed a very famous company that I will tell you in a few seconds to introduce this and to finish to give something more to the other conversation we were having a few minutes ago. I think I want to just to add this, that if I think there's a strong difference between Southern Europe, like Spain or Italy, and Ireland or other countries in the north of Europe that are where the salary is the average salary is very higher, and if one can achieve a dream through work, they gladly work and accept sacrifice. If one can only survive through work, as Sophia said, I cannot buy a house working, then the everyday, the present becomes crucial. And they are less willing to sacrifice and stay in a situation they dislike. So, for example, a good practice is Gucci. That is a very famous brand in Italy, a renowned fashion house that has the headquarters in Florence. Maybe everyone knows Gucci. And I think that the very crucial point of their welfare policy is the high salaries they provide to the workers. That is very important because you can identify with your job and create something. But they also have place a strong emphasis on employees' welfare, and they also have developed a comprehensive program to support their workforce. For example, they have a wide range of initiatives aimed to at enhancing the overall well-being of their employees. And these programs cover areas such health and wellness, professional development, and work-life balance. For instance, they offer flexible working hours, remote working options, and on-site health services.
And as you say, a very famous company internationally, and one that I think is part of this program we should look at in more detail, because of their prominence and their being so well known. Doing this might have an influence in encouraging other companies to do likewise. The fact that they are so well known, I think, is a positive thing, that a company of such reputation has chosen this path. Is there any? Thank you, Fabio. Is there anyone else can pick an example of a good practice from their region?
I did some research on this because I didn't know anyone from our region, from Galicia, right? It's not as impressive as Gucci, but the company is named Quovis, which is a telecommunication company, and they are like a very young company. And their work philosophy is that employees can work whenever they want, wherever they want, right? And they are also in constant communication with with the employees and the employers to know about the needs of their employees. So I thought that was a good practice with the employee welfare program, right, from the company.
What do you know what sector they're in?
Telecommunications.
Oh, telecoms. Okay.
Telecom.
Thank you.
I think also this way of working was promoted by the COVID, right? When we all started to work from home, many companies commenced this new way of working.
Okay.
Connor, can I just add an example of I suppose a good practice locally?
Yes, please, Jana. Thank you.
Yes, I suppose off the back of COVID, there's been a lot of needing support around mental health as well, and it seems to be a common trend through loads of companies like Google and Netflix and Salesforce, etc. But locally here, we have Collins Aerospace, which is a large global organization owned by an American company, and they have actually developed a Connect team, so a team of 10 people within their organizations. They employ about 1,000 people locally. And they section that into people in place. So obviously the people is their workforce, and that's really, they run programs around health and well-being, training that they need within the team. Also health insurance, to get their people, making sure that they're working to the best of their ability. But also the other element of that is place. And it's about the location and investing in their community and helping other businesses. So yes, it's very much, about developing that strategy internally, but then how can they develop that strategy externally and showcase what they're doing, because it's their families and friends and people connect it externally as well. So they've been doing a really, really good job in that, and engage with the schools as well, because they're the up and coming workforce. So they're being quite smart about it and moving forward as well. So that's a really, really, I feel it's a really good practice locally of how they're structuring their Connect team to be able to deliver, more for the people of this area.
That's a really interesting example. They're an American-owned company. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes, they're as part of a large organization, yeah, American owned, but they want to develop. I think it came off the back of COVID whenever, they stopped. So they produced I think 70% of the world's aircraft seats. So when they weren't producing, there's no flights, everything was grounded, they weren't producing. So it was very much community led. They had to rethink what it was they were doing. So it all came from that as well. Also, I was speaking to another company, Belfast based, and everybody went to remote working during COVID, but just within his team, I think he had 40 people in his team, and there was maybe 5 within that team ended up going on antidepressants because they were working from home. So managing that well-being. So he's actually brought people back to working within and creating that environment of good workplace, to really support his workers to be able to move forward, because the whole remote thing wasn't working for him. So yes, remote is really good to help build, that skills, but that needs managed, and there's technology obviously being brought into the workforce to manage that, but then we're not up to date. The older workforce maybe isn't up to date with those technology needs. So yeah, so it needs to be very much led by the employees, and I think that's where the likes of Collins Aerospace are doing really well. They've set up this Connect team to be able to design this with their people internally and also the community externally.
That's a really good example. Thank you, Jana. And my limited knowledge of the company is that there are local managers that live locally. They're not managers who've moved here from America. So they have taken a cultural direction within the company, but they've interpreted that for the local circumstances in which they're set. Thanks, everyone. I think we'll move now to the final discussion point for today, and that is, what are the challenges making it difficult for some organisations and their employees to agree a satisfactory welfare package, and what can government and EU policymakers do to help?
I'll maybe jump in there quickly first, Connor.
Yes,
I
Deborah.
think just even listening to the rest of the conversation, there's perhaps a bit of a gap between the smaller companies, and I identify with what Jenna was saying about, you know, maybe the smaller companies that are owner managed small teams can afford a little bit of time to work directly with their employees and put this type of thing in place. The bigger companies tend to have a HR team, possibly in some of the examples that were cited, will have you know, even teams dedicated to people and I suppose that people management side of things. The gap, I think, sits in between. So the companies that are sort of growing, and one of the biggest challenges, I think, is there's so many communication channels and tools out there that businesses maybe just don't know how to work that. I mean, I work with quite a lot of growing companies, probably in that £2 to £10 million category. And a constant that I will get from those owners is, well, when we were smaller, we could do this, that, and the other. But we're not big enough to maybe have a HR or a people manager. And I think that's part of the issue there as well. In that sort of gap in the middle, because even the examples that were cited are bigger or smaller companies and maybe not a lot in the middle.
That's really interesting. And I can see the logic. The big company has the resource to dedicate a team. The small company, probably the colleagues are working more closely together. They know each other. They know their personal lives and challenges. But as you say, it's the companies in the middle, perhaps with workforces quite large, you know, but maybe 30 to 100 employees. But they're not big enough to have a full human resource team. That's interesting. I hadn't thought of that, actually, and that's an interesting view.
I think once you go on beyond that sort of 10 to 15 employees, there's a gap there. You know, once somebody gets to 60 or 80 employees, they tend to maybe need a HR resource, but there's something between that. There's something missing between that sort of 15 to 60 or 70 employees that maybe is preventing this from happening.
Interesting. Thank you. John McGinn, if you're still there, you're I'm putting John on the spot here. You're an advisor, you're an accountant, and you're working with businesses, and in fact you have a lot of experience of businesses putting packages together. What do you see as the difficulties, and are there any, crucially, are there any policy changes that would work, that are realistic in your view as an accountant and business advisor?
Thanks for putting me on the spot, Connor. I suppose what Deborah was saying earlier, that there is that maybe gap in the middle. The micro companies are delivering their face-to-face contact with staff every day of the week, so therefore it's easier to pick up the vibes and work on packages for your staff when it's a micro enterprise. The larger enterprises are obviously very good at doing it. Those companies in the middle, the SMEs, who we generally spend our days advising, they're trying. I suppose, to use our own business as an example, where we have a team of about 40 staff, mixture of trainees and professionals, we have and try to look at all aspects of people and place. We are a recognised training firm with the professional body, so therefore we do offer training and apprenticeships to staff, but we also try and support colleagues who want to continue in their professional development, be it in relevant subject matter or even outside of outside of that. We are flexible around holiday arrangements and try to be, where I think 5 staff got married last year, so we had to be flexible. It was just a case of having to be flexible. We are, with COVID, we had to, everybody was working from home, as Sophia said, and that was brought upon us as employers, and we haven't stepped back from that. We acknowledge staff like that, and therefore, rather than rock the boat, we're continuing with those practices, because that helps staff in terms of not only their work-life balance, but in terms of family life and even location. We're a multi-site business, so we've 3 offices. So again, if it suits staff to drop into one office or the other on particular days, we're happy to accommodate.
But on that note, can I thank you all today for participating? We've had a great turnout today. Thanks everyone for taking time voluntarily. You're very busy people, and it's greatly appreciated.